Hey travel creators, welcome back to another episode. If this is your first time hearing my voice, hey, I'm Laura. I'm a content developer for travel influencers, and I aim to make your content life just a little bit easier. And today we're diving into the magical world of the 80-20 rule and how the heck we can apply it to content creation. You know that golden principle where 80% of your results come from just 20% of your efforts? Yeah, we're going to be applying that to your travel content creation strategy. So let's get started with what the real definition of the 80-20 principle is. You've probably heard of it, but here is its more formal definition. And speaking of formal, it's formally called the, oh boy, I don't even know how to say it, Pareto principle, but I don't really like being formal. So we're going to call it the 80-20 principle as it is most commonly known. And essentially its definition is a phenomenon that states that roughly 80% of outcomes come from 20% of causes. So a small percentage of effort or work or creating that you're actually doing is going to have the biggest impact in your content creation journey. In other words, less but better. You are a creator on the internet, and you're probably on the marketing side of the internet, especially if you're listening to this. My condolences. But you've probably heard the advice that you need to be constantly churning out fresh content. But if this is not your first episode of my podcast, you know that that is bad advice. That is, no, we don't listen to that over here. Not only is that advice feeding into the principles of creator expectations, which, by the way, are insane and exhausting, and who made them, but hold on. Oh my God. I've been trying to catch this fly in this room literally all day, and I think I have an opportunity, so I'm going to take it because 20% of your efforts result in 80% of your outcomes. Oh, I didn't get it. Hold on, where'd it go? It's just like all up in my space. Maybe he's a listener. Maybe he's a fan. I don't know. Oh! Whatever. Okay. Not only is that feeding right into the principles of creator expectations, which, by the way, are insane. Okay, who expects you to travel for 40 hours and then churn out incredible pieces of content about your trip? What? Why did we all of a sudden decide collectively that we need to be creating content about the places we just were immediately and get that out as soon as possible? That is exhausting. That can lead right into burnout. And that is not the advice that we follow on this side of the internet. My goal is to help you feel like you don't need to post all the time about every trip because your grid is full of evergreen content already. So anytime someone comes across your page, they're already seeing content that isn't an expired trend. And plus, oh man, you're out there traveling, you're living your best life, and it's time to make sure you finally get to experience the good journey that you were on with your own two eyes rather than looking through a camera lens. You probably spend hours thinking about how you can be creating more content, perfecting it, working on the next project, researching, learning, etc. All of these things. But is any of that really helping you get the content done? Probably not. Sure, it's important to learn. Of course, you're listening to this right now. You're learning, you're trying new things. But all of those things that we're doing to get content out the door, that's the 80%, okay? The 80% meaning you're researching, okay, what CTA should I be using? By the way, I have a podcast episode dedicated to that. Or how can I use AI in my content? I also have a podcast episode about that. But those things are all the 80%. And that 80% can be outsourced. Your 20% of content creation is actually in front of your device, putting together the video, writing the caption, connecting with your community. That is the 20% that is going to get you the farthest. Some of that 20% can be outsourced, absolutely. But having some of yourself infused in that 20% is going to go so far, especially in community building. And the reality is you're a creator, so you like to create. It's not like you're a creator and then it's immediately, oh, I'm just going to go hire someone to do all this content for me. We step into that when you are running this content like a business, and now there's so many other places where your expertise is needed, and it's not needed to create the next Instagram story. It's not. So as you keep evolving as a creator, you can reevaluate what is your 80%, what is your 20%, where do you really need to, and maybe sometimes even more importantly, want to be involved. Because there's some things that I do in my business that I'm sure you do as well that I don't necessarily need to be doing, but I enjoy it. One of the ways to tackle this content creation 80-20 principle and apply it even further is when you choose to repurpose your content. When you do this, you are reshaping content that for you, based on your goals, has performed well. We always say, oh, look for content that has performed well. Well, what does that mean? It is different for every creator. You might want to engage more of a community. So you're going to look for comments. Or maybe you're trying to reach more people. So you're going to look for profiles reached. Whatever you deem your goals are is going to impact the metrics that will tell you whether your content has performed well or not. So when you take the time to look at your metrics, don't forget to do this. You are always leaning into your 20%. You're already cutting out all of the hard parts. By the way, if you're doing this, you are basically one step towards repurposing your content, but you're cutting out all the hard bits and you're cutting right to the meat. You're getting right to the meat of what your audience wants to see from you. Because you're using the analytics to see what your audience already likes to see from you. And you can read into that. I have a couple of questions I like to ask about that content, which I have covered in another episode. If you want the specifics on that, let me know on Instagram and I will create a fun piece of Instagram content for you about those. But you can ask about the piece of content, or when you're looking in your analytics, does my audience respond more to carousels? Is it reels? Is it when I talk about X theme? What is it that my audience is really responding to? And I notice these trends. It's so fun to look. But look at them with intention. So I would spend some time pulling them. And that is a good thing to do on a monthly basis because it's a long enough period of time to get a pulse or an understanding on what content you had go out and what people responded to rather than a week. Because people's weeks vary too much. It's easier to look a little bit longer. Plus, when you look monthly, you get to kind of cut out things like holidays where people just aren't going to be on their little devices, or on, let's say there was like a crazy winter storm and a lot of your audience is in like Canada and they're probably going to be on their phone more, because it's Canada and you're inside. I'm just kidding. Please, we might have to live with you up there. So start making those cabins in your backyards. Kidding, not kidding. Another way to apply this principle to your content is to think about your to-do list. So think of that for a moment. Yes, let it sit in it. Let it be overwhelming. It's okay. I know that this to-do list is longer than a CVS receipt. That's okay. This is creative work, and nobody will ever understand how long it takes or how much time it takes to complete it and how many things are involved. Once you realize this work will never end, in a good way, it will set you free. Because I, probably like a lot of you, love to just check things off the to-do list. And when you choose a creative pathway in life, that is not 100% possible. Of course, you can create the systems and the processes, which I love to help people do to make the content creation easier so you can have those nice check boxes. But there's always things you can be learning. There's always other creators you can learn from or read about or all of the things. But within your to-do list, completing just 20% of the work that is on it that you've laid out for the week or for the month, whatever, will actually create the largest impact for your content and make the biggest dent in your to-do list. If you don't believe me, here's an example. Let's say you planned out 5 days of content and you sit down to create it. And in the time you've allotted yourself to create the content, which, side note, I highly recommend you do. You just sit down and say, I have 1 hour to do this because this is Parkinson's law, different thing. If you say, I just need to get it done by the end of the day, it will take you to the end of the day. Whereas if you say, okay, I have 1 hour to do it, you'll get it done in 1 hour. Basically, the task fills the amount of time allotted. So use that wisely. And in the time you've allotted to create that content, you only got through 2 posts that are completely done and they're scheduled and they're headed on their way out the door. Having those 2 posts polished and done and shared that week is going to go so much farther than not getting any done. So don't beat yourself up about not fulfilling all of the content that you set out or wish to create. And here's a little inside info for you, if this is also something you've been kind of having some guilt over. I've been chatting with some creator friends, and they have noticed that they've actually seen better results from not posting so much content. It is quite literally less, but better. But having those 2 posts go out a week is going to create a bigger impact than nothing, like I said, because people are going to come to your page and they're going to see, oh, she posted already. She is an active account. Awesome. Cool. Look at this post. She's hanging out on Instagram. I researched for you some benefits of the 80-20 principle in case you're still not convinced, and I want you to hear them. One of the benefits is that it can help you set clearer priorities. And if you have that massive to-do list, picking the most important, the 20% on that list is going to get you the 80% results. And I know you're thinking, but Laura, everything is a priority. No. If you don't choose the absolute most important things, somebody else will for you. I would recommend, this is just an example, of course, a hypothetical. Maybe choose 3 to 5 tasks for the week and stick to that. Try a number. And then don't maybe make like one of those numbered things, like creating an entire course, okay? Like in a week. Okay, don't do that. Make them manageable, realistic things. Speaking of courses, I myself am launching a DIY content repurposing course just for you. You'll learn how to create content your audience actually wants to see and finally feel confident in posting while you're away. There is no more post guilt here. Click the link in the show notes to get first dibs on this game-changing course at a price you won't want to miss. Okay, back to the benefits of the 80-20 principle. It also increases your productivity, and if you think about it, you have a much smaller list to get through of content creation tasks, which is much more fun to work through, more satisfying. You feel like you've completed something rather than your long CVS receipt list. It also allows you to stay more focused on those few things you're going to do that are actually going to move the needle, and it helps you portion out your work into manageable chunks. So I would again encourage you to try and just give yourself an allotted amount of time to get the content done, and that's the content you could get done then in that certain amount of time, and just forget the rest. And if you really are jazzed about that content and you want to come back to it later and create more, awesome. Give yourself more time. But eventually, once you start giving yourself time, you'll know how long it takes you to create, 5 posts or whatever it might be. So you can just start scheduling that into your calendar. What I've been doing recently, honestly, because I am lucky enough to be working on so many different projects for people, is when I'm done with one, I'll put like a note to myself at the bottom that says next steps. Like here's literally specifically when I come back to this project and I need to move on now, what I need to do, so that when I come back, I don't have to spend, 10 minutes getting my head back into it and trying to figure out where I left off, especially when you're creating, weeks or months of content and things like that. It can get a little hairy. So that has been working well for me. I would recommend giving it a try. Write yourself a little tiny note of what needs to happen or like what you would do next if you had another hour to work on it. So are you convinced yet about the 80-20 principle? Have you experienced this yourself? Let me know on Instagram at Travel Content Writing if you'll be trying to implement any of the 80-20 principle into your content creation work. And let me know how. I'm sure there are way better ways than I could just think of for this particular episode. So perhaps we'll revisit it. But so go ahead and conquer the world of content creation with the 80-20 rule. And don't forget, if nobody has told you yet this week, you are doing a good job. Happy creating, and I can't wait to see what you make. P.S. Don't forget to check your analytics. Okay, love you, bye.